everyone. This is Pastor Rich. I'm here with Pastor Jeff. We just had another great conversation in the series Stops Along the Way. And I had a great time listening to this. I have some questions for you.
Okay.
All right. My first one. I love the idea that people consider Jesus the Messiah, but there's still certain things in their lives that they may not fully trust Jesus with. So in your experience as a pastor for such a long time, what are some areas that we Christians typically want to keep to ourselves?
It's a great question. Before I answer it, I want everybody to know that was Rich's third time trying to do the introduction.
But it wasn't the fifth, so
Yeah.
I mean that's a win.
So, what was the question again?
So this is my second time asking this question. So I love the idea that many people consider Jesus their Messiah, but there's still certain things in their lives that they would not trust Jesus with.
Yeah.
So in your experience, being a pastor for several years, what are some things that we as Christians would want to keep to ourselves?
So I think what people want to keep to themselves is whatever area of their life they believe makes them secure or gives them identity. And so if we believe that something makes us secure, then we'll tend to hold that back from God, right? So if I believe that my ability to make my own decisions is what makes me secure, that I know better than somebody else does. If I believe that money makes me secure or achievement or what, just fill in your blank. So anything like that, and what the Bible would say is that becomes an idol in our life, right? I would rather have this than Christ. And so like the passage, Matthew 16, that we're looking at today, Jesus says, deny yourself, take up your cross. That deny yourself part is these things are the core of my security. Now, the other part of that is my identity, and it crosses over a lot. So if my identity is athletics, if it's a sexual identity, if it's an achievement identity, if it's a intellectual identity, it's anything that I would look and say, this is who I am. Describe yourself to me in 5 words or less. I am this. Even parenting, etc. And Jesus would look and say, right, that's deny yourself, right? So I'm the things that make me secure, that I believe make me secure, the things that I believe make me, are the parts of our lives that I think we tend to keep Jesus the furthest away from. We're afraid of losing that or losing control of that. So it's not really a set of behaviors, because behaviors, we're all good at different things. And so some of us are great at certain behaviors and bad at others and vice versa. It's not really a set of behaviors. It's more that security and that identity. And however that plays out in your life is often what Jesus is asking for, where he would say, I want you to be known for me, by me. I am your provider. I am your safety. and trust me in those things.
That's awesome. Man, thanks for that. So you just talked about it a little bit in your answer, but you talked a lot in your conversation about carrying a cross and denying yourself. And I thought, man, I think we as Christians, we are much more apt to carry a banner. We're saying like, oh, I believe in Jesus. I think he's a great guy. Or, yeah, I'm a Christian. I go to Grace or I go to anywhere else. This idea of carrying a cross is much less of a popular idea. And I even remember one pastor saying that we as Christians in this kind of first world America where we don't have to trust in God for much anything if we didn't want to, is that meaning that we don't have to carry a cross. So maybe if you could talk a little bit about that, like what are some crosses that we might carry in this first world America that we live in today?
I think we don't fear generally. We don't fear lack of food, shelter, clothing, kind of a thing. It's not a big fear in our world. I think the biggest cross that we carry is the cross of being outside the norm. And so I see that, and that has grown stronger in our culture. I'm going to say the last 10 years because social media pushes it. So it used to be something. I've been a pastor for a long time, as you said, which is code for he called me old. But 27 years, I remember when I started, the things that I would talk to high school kids about, I now talk to adults about. So we used to talk a lot to high school kids about high school culture, which is being terrified of being outside the norm, and peer pressure and all those kind of things. Social media, which I like social media, but one of the downsides of social media is it basically has brought high school culture to the mainstream of our culture. So we function in groupthink. And if we're not in that groupthink, we will be punished, excoriated, ostracized like people used to be in high school. And then you would grow up and become an individual, and it was all considered immature. Well, now the whole culture does it. That's what the cancel culture is, that et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, groupthink can be a positive thing, right? So sometimes the group thinks correctly. When it comes like racism and things like that, they would think correctly. There's other times that the group thinks incorrectly. Sexual identity, when it comes to like issues of life, when it comes to issues to morality, like a lot of the groupthink is incorrect there. And so a cross that a believer has to pick up instead of a banner, I think that I like the way that you said that. I think a lot of times a Christ follower wants to pick up a banner which says, I'm right and you're wrong, dummy. And that's not the calling. The calling is the cross. And so Jesus bore the cross in silence, so he just did it. He just lived it. He just was it. And I think a Christian oftentimes would rather yell back at somebody than love them, and love them and help them to think through something. So I think that's a big one in our world today, and it's a painful one. Nobody likes me either. I don't like to be outside the mainstream. I don't like to be accused. I don't like to be called names. I don't like any of that kind of stuff. I don't think that you can be a committed Christ follower and be in the mainstream of anything. So in our culture, there's generally like a left and a right in the middle. That's how we would think about it. And Jesus would say there's a left, there's a right, there's a middle, and then there's my way.
Right.
It doesn't fit into any of that anywhere, not cleanly. There's little reflections in all three of those things. But the way of Jesus, the way of the cross, is a completely different way of thinking, functioning, a different value system, the whole 9 yards. And so Jesus isn't going to fit. And taking up your cross means you're not going to either. And that's why he said, you're going to be hated.
Right.
I promise you. But you're going to be hated because of me. So I think it's in there somewhere that we would feel that the most.
Yeah, and it's great that Jesus, in all of his wisdom, he used something that was such a negative term like a cross, because he's like, this is going to be difficult. This is not going to feel like how you think it's going to feel. This is going to be difficult. This is great. Well, thank you, Pastor Jeff, for taking the time, and I'm really glad that we got this on the third take.
That's right.
But this has been the Weekend Extra. If this is your first time hearing this conversation, we got plenty of others that you can look at online. But plan on being here next week for next week's Weekend Extra. Have a great one.